What's up, castaways? This is Miles Away and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to go over the top 6 things that I think you need to look out for when buying your first hardware synthesizer. Now, I've gotten a lot of requests for a video like this or messages asking me questions, so these are the tips that I wish that someone would have told me when I was first making the jump from the software world into the world of hardware, or if you're just deciding to get into this hobby for the first time. Once you have your budget down, these tips should help you decide exactly what synth to go for, as they apply to both cheap and expensive synthesizers equally. Now, just a warning, this will be more of an informational video with lots of talking and not too much playing, so if you want to check out what lots of different synths sound like, you're at the right place. Check out my other videos or some of my original music. Anyways, as always, if you like this, remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment, let me know what you think for the best tips for buying synths, and let's get started. Alright, so for the first tip, you need to go in and find out exactly what kind of voice count and type you're gonna need. Now, polyphonic synths are usually a great recommendation for a first synth, as they allow you to play multiple notes and chords at once. They also usually have a button to trigger a mono mode for bass duties, so they're quite versatile. For me, I'd recommend 4 voices as the bare minimum for voice count, with 6 being the sweet spot. Polysynths might also feel more natural to you if you're coming from the piano or software world. However, never assume that a synth can play chords or is polyphonic, as a lot of the most classic and best synths are what's called monophonic. Now, monophonic synths can only play one note at a time. You might be thinking, now why would I ever get something that I can't play chords with and I'm stuck with only one note at a time? Well, monosynths almost always have other things going for them, especially at the same price as a comparable polysynth, because of the cost saved from having less voices. You're likely to find better hands-on control, better sequencing and modulation options for a budget monosynth versus a comparably priced poly offering. Additionally, some of the fattest bass sounds known to humankind are found on monosynths. Finally, there's paraphonic synths. Now, paraphonic synths can sometimes seem like the forgotten middle child between polyphonic and monophonic, but they really are an awesome option for the right type of person. Paraphonic usually means that while the synth can play multiple notes at once, they do share common properties like one filter and one envelope to shape the sound. While I typically wouldn't recommend paraphonic synths to everyone, they are a really great option for musicians that are interested in creating kind of happy accidents with interesting limitations, because of the fact that you can get some really crazy stuff from having different oscillators playing different notes, waveforms, all going into one filter being sequenced together. Now, the next thing to decide is an age-old question, whether to go for a digital or analog synthesizer. The general rule of thumb is that digital synths are usually cheaper and have more features, whereas analog synths are more expensive and more limited. As for the sounds, I want to dispel any myths right here. Digital synths sound great, they're extremely usable, and you can absolutely get professional quality records using digital synths. In fact, most of my highest played songs are made using entirely only digital synths before I got really deep into the analog world. However, there are still a couple advantages of analog that still make it something that you might want to consider. Analog synths tend to have a bigger sweet spot, whereas digital synths usually have to work a bit more at sound design to get them to sound real good. Analog synths also often have excellent sounding filters, which are one of the hardest things to characterfully and accurately model in the digital world. There's also hybrid synths like the ARTURIA MICROFREAK that blend digital oscillators with an analog filter for the best of both worlds. I highly recommend hybrid synths. I think, synths like the NOVATION Summit over here, they're so fun to use, and they offer, some of the greatest things of analog, like that really warm, rich tone, but also the incredible, more depth and more interesting sounds that an analog synth could never create as well. The next thing that you need to know before buying your first synth is, how do you mainly plan on using it? Will you be playing live with a band or using it in a studio? Will you be hooking it up to a computer or jamming DAW lists on your back deck? For me personally, I mainly buy synths for the studio, which means I don't put that much emphasis on if the synths can save presets or how portable they are. I also mainly sequence my synths with my computer, so I don't need to worry too much about a synth having a built-in sequencer. If on the other hand, you're mainly looking for a synth to jam with live with friends or a band, you probably want something that can very easily and reliably save and load presets. And if you're going to be diving into the world of DAW list jamming, then you're definitely going to want to make sure that your synth has a really fun way to program in notes without being tied to a computer, like a built-in sequencer with multiple lanes of automation. Next up, and probably one of the most important, is deciding on what kind of workflow that is going to resonate with you and that's going to inspire you to make music. Now, I'm a firm believer that one of the main reasons to switch to hardware synths over software is because of the, inspiration that comes from a hands-on workflow. Simply put, for me, it's just more fun to twist knobs than use a mouse and keyboard. I will always look at how much hands-on control a synth has when making a purchase, and that's one of the biggest factors for me. However, if you don't mind menu diving and scrolling through different screens and that's a workflow that gels with you, you can get some serious synth bang for your buck, as these synths are usually quite a lot deeper for the price and offer a lot more features hidden behind menus. Now, as great as synths can sound on their own, they really do come alive when paired with some great effects like reverb, chorus, and delay. Here you're gonna have to decide if built-in effects are something you value. This will be a bit of a dance, as some built-in effects sadly just don't sound great and could be easily replaced by a plugin, whereas others truly complete the package. The KORG MINILOGUE XD, KORG PROLOGUE, and the NOVATION Peak and Summit, for example, have, in my opinion, the best sounding built-in effects I've ever used. However, if you do plan on recording your synths into your DAW using an audio interface, there are dozens of great free plugins you can use to take your sound to the next level. One in particular I recommend is Valhalla Supermassive. It's an absolutely cavernous sounding reverb and it's completely free for Mac and PC, so I've left a link to that in the description below. Finally, the last thing to decide on and know when buying your first synth is where you plan on going in the future with this wonderful hobby, so you can future-proof your setup. This is where the idea of connectivity comes in. If you're like me and you mainly use your synths with your computer, then MIDI in, out, and USB will be likely all you're gonna need. However, if you're intrigued by the idea of one day creating your own interconnected synth setup outside of a computer, then consider looking into synths with more connectivity options, such as MIDI through and control voltage, or CV for short. Control voltage will allow you to connect modular gear to your synthesizer to allow for external control, modulation, and much more. If this interests you, I highly recommend a semi-modular synth, which will allow you to play it on its own like a regular synthesizer, but also connect it to other modular gear. The BEHRINGER Neutron and MOOG Grandmother are two great semi-modular synths if you're looking to jump off and have a great starting point, but also leave that door open for future modular gear. Alright everyone, that brings this video to a close. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys if you are looking to buy your first synthesizer. As always, leave a comment if you have any questions. I make sure to reply to every single one. Let me know in the comments as well if you have any recommendations for what to look for, anything that I missed, or just your favorite first synth. And as always, if you like this content, please remember to like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video.